Good morning. My name is Verna LaBoy, and I serve on the Celebration Planning Committee and also work as a community health worker for Columbia Boone County Public Health and Human Services. It is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Renee Montgomery. First, I would like to thank MU Athletics for being this morning's speaker sponsor. Thank you, MU Athletics, for your support. Renee Montgomery is a West Virginia native with 3 girls' state basketball championships. She graduated from UConn as a 2-time All-American in 2009 and played on an undefeated team that went on to win the NCAA championship that year. She was drafted 4th overall in the WNBA and is a 2-time WNBA champion while also being named All-Star and 6th Woman of the Year in her 11-year professional career. In broadcasting, she serves as a sports analyst and host to numerous shows, including her own weekly podcast, Montgomery and Company and Take Line. In February 2021, Montgomery decided to retire after sitting out of the 2020 WNBA season to focus on social justice reform. That same year, she became, co-owner and vice president of the Atlanta Dream, making her the first WNBA player to become an owner and executive of the WNBA team. It is my pleasure, friends, to welcome to the stage Renee Montgomery.
Wow, I want her to give my speech for me. That was... Energy was incredible. Forever Forward. You know, this marks the 30th anniversary of the Columbia Values Diversity Celebration. So first of all, let's give a round of applause for 30 years. That's a long time. That's a long time. So Forever Forward, I Googled it just to make sure I had the definitions right. And forever means in the direction, forever is for all future time, for always. And forward is in the direction that one is facing or traveling toward the front. The front. So I have a saying that is moments equal momentum. And the reason that I say that is when I opted out in 2020, I typed out a tweet and I ended it with moments equal momentum because a lot of people were confused as to why I would opt out of my dream job. So I'm going to start all the way at the beginning. I started out growing up in West Virginia where there wasn't a lot of people doing what I was trying to do. The WNBA wasn't even started when I first started having hoop dreams. It started out with just little moments. You know, I asked Paige Beckers when I was interviewing her, I said, hey, were you good from the start? And she was like, yeah, I was gifted. You know, I was gifted from the beginning. I was like, okay, you know, that wasn't my story because when I started out, I had to add moments every day. I picked up the ball and I fell in love with it, but the game just wasn't fluent to me just yet. So I started out dribbling every day on a gravel floor. Coach Ariema thinks that's how I learned how to get my handles. Maybe he's right, I don't know. But I started out dribbling on gravel, and then my Diddy, which is my dad, I'm from West Virginia, y'all. My Diddy started to notice that I had a passion. I was doing it every day, unprompted. I'm just dribbling. We didn't even have a basketball hoop, but I had a ball. And I just added moments every single day because I felt like each of those moments was helping me get to where I wanted to get to the goal I wanted to get to. And at that time, my goal was, first of all, I just wanted to get on the court. You know, I was sitting on the bench, so I was like, I want to play a little bit. You know, I like the game. I want to play. So each moment was getting me onto the court. Then when I started to get onto the court, I started to get a little bit more hungry because I wanted to be a factor in the game. I didn't want to just get in the game. I wanted to have an impact on the game. So that fueled my energy some more to add more moments. And then once I started to play more minutes, I wanted to be a real reason to why we won. So I started to practice more. At that time, my daddy put me up a hoop in our backyard, and so it was on. I was out there for hours at a time. My snook, which is my mom, I'm from West Virginia, y'all. My snook would have to tell me to come inside because I just wanted to stay because I felt like the more I was on the court outside, the better I was going to be on the court in front of everyone else, the momentum that I was trying to build. So then it got to the point where I started to become a factor on my team, and I started to fall in love even more with the game. I started playing basketball because my sisters, which I have 2 older sisters, I'm the youngest. My sisters started playing basketball, so I started playing basketball. That's just how it happens when you're the youngest. They went on to be cheerleaders and majorette leads, and I had to let them do what they do because I'm going to stick with basketball. But then as I started to get older, in junior high, people started to recognize that I had a skill set. People started to think that I was just born gifted. That's not the truth. I had moments that equaled momentum, and I just continued with those moments because I started to see the momentum in myself. So as I got older, I'm playing on an AAU team, and our AAU team wasn't like normal AAU teams. I had the #1 player in the nation playing alongside of me and Alexis Hornbuckle. Then we had a player you guys might know, Candace Parker. She was playing on our AAU team. The West Virginia Tornadoes, it's crazy, but that's how it was. We had Tasha Humphreys, who ended up going to the University of Georgia, was playing on our AAU team. We had a very good team. I was back at the same process where I wanted to be a factor. I was playing, but I'm playing alongside some superstars, so I wanted to be a factor. So again, just kept adding moments every single day. Forever forward was my thought process. Just keep pushing forward. I started out in high school. As she mentioned, we won 3 titles in high school. I'm still mad about that when we didn't win. I know it's an athlete thing. I'm happy for the 3, but man, that 4th one. So I'm in high school, and we start to see a little interest from college coaches, and that was the ultimate goal for me because, as I mentioned, when I started out playing, there wasn't a WNBA. That became a later dream. So I started out getting college coaches, D2 schools, and I'm like, you couldn't tell me nothing. I'm like, are you kidding me? They want me to come play at their school. It fueled my moments. It fueled my momentum. I kept practicing. I kept playing forever forward. Then I started to get more scholarships offers and more letters in the mail. And I started to look around our games, and we started to have the who's of coaches sitting around there. And I couldn't believe it. I'm starstruck for the coaches. Like, first of all, I can't believe that they came to West Virginia. I'm like, to my house, my Snook and Diddy's house. And so that just fueled me forever forward. One coach in particular, as you guys know, Coach Ariema, he was coaching at the University of Connecticut. He came to our house, and all the other coaches, they had completely different pitches. The other coaches would tell me, yeah, come to our school. You're going to be a star player. You're going to play all the minutes. You're going to be our point guard. You're going to be our future. That wasn't Coach Ariema's approach at all. If you guys know anything about Coach Ariema, you can assume that he wasn't going to come in there and saying that. He came to our house, and he said, you're a good player. Obviously, you know that. We have a lot of good players that play for UConn. He was like, we already have a point guard here, but I don't play favoritism. It's any man's job to win, or any woman's job. And he told me that, I'm going to push you to be the best you can be if you want to be. So for me, I sat and thought about that, and I was like, a different approach, but it's kind of my mentality. I always wanted to be the best. And growing up in West Virginia, I didn't really have people around me doing what I wanted to do. There were no pro players that came out of West Virginia. There was no one that went to big D1 schools in West Virginia. So the pastor said, faith is the evidence of things hoped for, the substance of things hoped for, but the evidence of things not seen. I had a lot of faith. I had a lot of faith in myself, and my family had a lot of faith in me. And and our family, you talked about our podcast. We have a podcast that season 2 released today. Go check it out. Season 2 started today, Montgomery and Company, but we have a saying called it's a generational thing because it is in our family. My parents always let us believe whatever we wanted to do, we could. Not only me, but my sisters. My other sister is Dr. Nishay Short, who became one of the first lead pharmacists in West Virginia of minorities. So my family has an idea that faith doesn't have to be something that you can see around you. You can just create your own reality, and that's exactly what we started to do. So when I ended up getting a scholarship to UConn, a lot of people in West Virginia didn't believe my parents when they said that we were going to have this scholarship. You know, they said, oh, yeah, let us know when it's real. So when it actually got released from the Hartford Courant, we got all kinds of calls from West Virginia. No one had faith in it but us. We went on to UConn, forever forward. Moving on to UConn, I felt like I was starting back again at square zero. There was a lot of players from New York, a lot of players from California, Georgia, the big areas, and I felt a little bit, I wouldn't say uncomfortable, but I felt like I don't know if the competition I had in West Virginia was going to compare to the competition that they were having in New York and the Californias and Georgia. So I went back to what I know, just adding my moments, getting in the gym, working out, adding momentum, forever forward. So we get to UConn, and UConn is a very particular school in a sense that excellence is expected. You don't get a pat on the back for a participation trophy at UConn when you come behind all the excellent players that were there. When you go to UConn, they expect you to win. So when I won one championship there, when I tell people that, they're like, oh, what happened? What happened? You went to UConn, right? I'm like, yeah. You're like, you only won one? Forever forward, right? So I got to UConn, and it was a grind. We learned about that 2%. And if you guys don't know what 2% is, 2% of athletes go on to make it to pro. Usually 2% is that number of from high school to college, 2% from college to pro. That 2% is what we were achieving, that 2% of excellence. Do 2% more than everyone else. Because in sports, the margin of victory is so small. So at UConn, I always had the hunger coming from West Virginia, but at UConn I learned to get that 2% where every drill had to be perfect. Every drill, it's not about just adding my moments. It's not about just creating momentum. It's about trying to do every drill perfectly. That extra 2%. That, oh, yeah, I'm tired, but I'm not going to bend over. That 2%. Why does that matter? It matters because in the game, when you're looking at your opponent face to face, and at UConn, you get everybody's best game. So when you're looking at the opponent's looking at you, and you don't look tired, that does something. I didn't realize that until I got to the Final Four, and we got to the tough games, and we're looking at each other, and we understand that we were ready. We had that 2%. That's what they were drilling into. Sometimes I would be mad because Coach Ariema, he would say, we're not leaving practice until we get it perfect. And I'm looking like, how is that possible to get it perfect with 12 people? Think about that. Like, for you to do something perfect yourself, I'm sure there's some perfectionists here. For you to do something perfect, that's very difficult. To get a group of people to do something perfect together, it seemed impossible. But we strive for it every game. Well, it took me until my senior year to really achieve perfection. We ended up going 35-0 and winning a national title. And I felt like, thank you. And I felt like, wow, I see why the first 3 years we got knocked out in the Elite Eight, Final Four. Actually, I lied. We got knocked out in the Elite Eight, Final Four, and the last year it was make or break for us. And we were still achieving that perfection. Off seasons were tough. Preseasons were tough. I know. Look, we got athletic crew over here. Y'all know about them off seasons? It's no fun. No bueno. But we were trying to achieve perfection. And my senior year, I felt like we did something. And it was again back to UConn. We were the third team to do it that time. We were the third team to get an undefeated season. So it wasn't nothing new for UConn, but it was new for us. And we were excited. And then I got to getting drafted, and I talked about my whole life is about forever forward, and the reason I say that is because we had a 35-0 season when I was a senior at UConn, and then when I was getting drafted, a lot of the talk was about, can I make it at the next level? Am I too small? Do I have what it takes? And we just came off of a 35-0 season, so I went back to what I know, adding my moments, trying to gain momentum. I just put my head down. At draft night, a lot of people hear about draft night, and it's like, oh, yes, it was a dream. I don't know about that. Listen, I was nervous because I heard scouts saying that I could go anywhere from 1 to 10. And so for me, everybody has seen draft nights where there's that athlete just sitting in the green room waiting on their name to be called. Everybody thought they were already going to be called. I was nervous that was going to be me. So I was just sitting there. I had my Snook and Diddy with me. I had Coach Ariema with me. He surprised me and pulled up. I was nervous because the first pick goes by, Angel McCautry. The second pick, Marissa Coleman. Third pick, Christy Tolliver. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's happening. I was very nervous, but I just, thought that the work will get me there. Then the fourth pick, I got selected to the Minnesota Lynx in the fourth pick of the WNBA draft. And so I had a sigh of relief. I knew that, all right, it's time to add my moments, get back to adding my momentum, forever forward. I realized that at that moment, what you did before in sports is tough. You're only as good as your last game in sports, and you're only as good as people think you can be in sports. But the thing about sports is you control your own destiny. A lot of people when I was in West Virginia didn't think I would make it to D1. Once I made it to UConn, a lot of people didn't think I would survive in the pros. I mean, I am standing 5'6". I list myself as 5'7". We all wear shoes to play. Get a little inch. We all wear shoes when we play. But my whole life was about believing in myself forever forward. So I get to the WNBA, and I'm back at square one again, starting over, ground zero, putting in the work. Every day I added my moments. Every day I gained a little bit of momentum. Now, coming from UConn, we were 35-0, so I spent a full year not losing a game just to go to the WNBA in my rookie season, us be about last place. Look, I don't know where we ended up, but it felt like last place. We lost games 2 in a row at times, and at UConn, losing 2 games in a row is like, you don't want to know what that's like at practice, okay? So I had to get used to having a quick memory, just getting used to the turnover of the WNBA, getting used to every single night you're going against all-stars, all-Americans. You're going against the best of the best of the best. I mean, it's 2%. The WNBA is one of the hardest leagues to make. There's only 144 players. 144 players out of all the players that play in college sports for women's basketball. 2%. Forever forward. So I get to the WNBA, and it's tough because when you play all the way up into the pros, it's a game, it's fun. But when you make it to the professional level, it's a job. It's a business. I learned that quickly whenever I got traded. So I got traded from the Minnesota Lynx to the Connecticut Sun, and that to me didn't feel like a business decision. That felt to me like going back home because, again, I played at UConn. But then when I got traded from the Connecticut Sun to Seattle, and then 3 months after being in Seattle, I got traded to the Minnesota Lynx, I'm like, this is a business, honey. Okay, I'm traveling. I'm living out of my suitcase. And the thing about getting traded from Seattle to Minnesota was, at that time, I was not even playing with my Seattle team because I was sick. At the time, I didn't know what I had, but I was sick with salmonella poisoning. Unfortunately, I went to a pig roast and ate the pig. I know everybody's probably like, all my teammates was like, why would you do that? I don't know, I was just trying to experience life, but I got sick. I got sick, and I got traded in that time. And when I got to Minnesota, I was telling my coach, I was like, Coach, I'm kind of sick. And she was like, yeah, we play tomorrow, okay? And I was like, all right, forever forward. All right, let's go. I played a game. I don't even really remember that game, but I do remember that when you have salmonella poisoning, you may not know, but it completely takes out your stomach, your wind, your everything. So I was practicing in the mornings for Minnesota, and then at nights I was running on a treadmill trying to just get back my wind, get back my conditioning, get back whatever I could. And this was 2015, and a lot of people ask me which one of my championships is my favorite, and I always tell them, you don't ask a parent which kid is their favorite. What is that? They're all my favorite. But in Minnesota, in 2015, UConn was my favorite championship, by the way, in case you were wondering. Because you only get 4 years. You can't go back and win a championship in college. But Minnesota was very special to me in 2015 because of everything I had to overcome. I had to join a new team halfway through the season. I had to figure out how I could get my body to do what my mind wanted it to do. And then we met Prince at the end of that championship year. So I think that there's nothing else. I danced on stage with Prince. Purple Rain, all of that. So 2015 was one of my favorite years just because of everything I had to overcome. Forever forward really was my mentality. My moments really had to equal momentum. And then to be able to be a vital part of that championship team alongside Maya Moore, who just recently retired, Simone Augustus, the whole group, Rebecca Brunson, Sylvia Fowles. That was the Monstars now that I think about it. We were a very, very connected group. It wasn't just the talent, it was all of our want to. I feel like we all understood what that 2% meant, and every day in practice we were trying to achieve it. Now then I go on and I finally had a choice to decide where I wanted to go. And so I chose to go to Atlanta. And the reason I chose Atlanta, it was very confusing for a lot of people because we won a championship in 2015, then we won another championship in 2017, and then I chose to go back home to Atlanta. And I say back home because I bought a home in Atlanta my third year in the league. I knew that's where I wanted to live. And so I wanted to play for the city I was living in, the city that was going to be home to me. At that time, Atlanta was the last place team in the league, so it was very confusing to my coach, very confusing to fans, but I understood it. Honestly, it was very confusing to my parents. You know, there was not really a lot of people around me that understood the move, but something was pulling me back to Atlanta. So we get to Atlanta, and, you know, Atlanta was difficult because I went from the Minnesota Lynx where the organization and everything about it was an excellence. They were building a dynasty. Minnesota Lynx have a dynasty. And then I go to Atlanta where the program wasn't the standard that you would expect. We poured into it. We ended up being the number 2 team going into the playoffs, and we had a couple injuries which kind of derailed our run. But as you guys know, in 2020, I opted out of the WNBA. Now, that was a difficult decision because I just talked about my whole life was about building moments, building momentum, forever forward to get to my dream of playing in the WNBA. But 2020 rocked a lot of us. You know, I'm sitting at home, and I'm sitting in Atlanta, of all places, and I'm looking at the news, and I'm looking outside of my window, and I'm seeing the exact same thing. The news is covering what's happening in my backyard. The news is covering what's happening in the city that I'm living in. So I talked to my parents. I talked to my family. I talked to my wife. Hi, Serena. Shouts to my baby. I talked to everybody about, you know, my thoughts, and I'm just like, you know, I'm a player that gives everything to the game. I'm a player that when I'm playing, I give my all. I have to make sure that what I'm doing, my heart is in it. And right now, my heart is in the city of Atlanta. I felt like I wanted to stand with the city, and I didn't even know what that was going to look like or what that was going to mean, but I just knew that I wanted to do it. So I wrote the tweet, the infamous tweet. And here's the thing about the tweet. A lot of people ask me, why did I send it in a tweet? Well, first of all, I love Twitter. Unfortunately, I hate what's happening to Twitter right now, but I love Twitter, and I'm into social media, and I didn't think that there was a lot of press. I don't know if you guys know, but only 4% of women's sports gets covered by the media. 4%. A whole 96% is dedicated to men's sports. So when I decided to send a tweet, it's because I didn't even think the media would care that I opted out of the WNBA. I was pleasantly surprised at how wrong I was. I sent the tweet and then went about planning for a Juneteenth pop-up block party at Centennial Olympic Park with my foundation, the Renee Montgomery Foundation. I was like, hey, there hasn't been a lot to celebrate during this time. So I just wanted to throw a pop-up block party to just give us something to celebrate. Well, in the midst of about an hour after I sent the tweet, I got a message from our Atlanta Dream PR letting me know that they want to set up a press conference. And I'm like, for what? And they were like, there's so many media outlets reaching out about this decision, and they want to understand, you know, why. I think everybody's question was the why. Why can't I do both? Why can't I go play in the bubble and also dedicate to social justice reform here in Atlanta? So we ended up doing a press conference, and I started to realize at that moment that a lot of people care about the humans of sports. You know, I talk about the WNBA and 4% of media coverage, but people care about humans, and people care about people that care. And that to me was not only surprising because sports is usually about sports, but it was motivating. It motivated me the fact that I'm on MSNBC talking to Joy Ann Reid, and I'm on all these different platforms not talking about sports. Now, I've never been on these platforms before, but when I opt out, now I'm on platforms that I've never been on before, forever forward. And then a year later, after opting out, I retired. And again, that confused a lot of people as well because, you know, I think I could still play a little bit right now if I wanted to. I don't know, but maybe. But on 2021, I retired, and a lot of people didn't know why I retired. But I knew something that other people didn't know. I knew that I wanted to create a longer change, a generational change. You know, on Montgomery and Company, we talk about it's a generational thing. And everything started to seem bigger after 2020. You started to look at things different after 2020. It was bigger than basketball. It was bigger than sports. It was bigger than me. And so in 2021, as you mentioned, I became the first player turned owner and executive of the WNBA team, the Atlanta Dream, because to me, that was my forever. That was moving forward. I felt like I understood why all the things in my life happened. I grew up in West Virginia, which has a 97% white population. 97%. So I grew up understanding how to live in an environment that wasn't necessarily the same as mine. Now, I was very blessed because my parents, Snook and Diddy, they went to an HBCU, West Virginia State University. That's where they met. My Snook met my Diddy on the first day he was on campus. He was a football player, and he actually, his story, my parents' story is interesting as well. My Snook grew up in Detroit, so she lived through the Detroit riots. So whenever 2020 happened, I called her and I was like, there's a lot of energy out here, what do you think about this? And she was like, oh, don't worry, baby. When people don't feel like their voices is heard, they try to make it felt. And I was like, So that sat with me, and I'm like, well, how am I going to make it felt? And then my Diddy, he was a football player that had major D1 football scholarship offers and turned them all down to attend an HBCU because he knew that's where he would get the treatment that he deserved. Yeah. So I didn't know it, but my life was leading up to what was coming in 2021. So in 2020, I had my Snook, who has been through it before, literally lived through it. Then in 2021, I had my parents understanding the magnitude of the moment. My wife is the one that even said to me, I think that the WNBA, the Atlanta Dream, is going to be up for sale. Why don't you just become part of one of the owners? And I looked at her like, girl, what? How are we going to do that? No one's done that before. But we talked about faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so we decided to start trying to go about it. We made a lot of calls. We talked to VCs. We talked to different people about how do we go about it. And then we talked to the commissioner. We talked to different people, and the commissioner let me know that, you can't be a player and owner at the same time, so you're going to have to make some decisions. And that's when I decided to retire, because I had to let everyone know that I was serious about what I was trying to do. Now becoming an owner and vice president of the Atlanta Dream, forever forward, I understood that it's not about just having the title, but it's about trying to make the difference. So one of the first things we did was we believe that representation matters. So we became the first all-black broadcast for the Atlanta Dream in our first year in the WNBA, because we wanted to make sure that we showed we are a representation of what the league looks like. Now, we talked about MLK, and this past MLK Day, we're coming right off of it. I had the honor of being invited to speak at the Ebenezer Baptist Church from the King family themselves. Dr. Bernice King was there. Reverend Senator Warnock was there. Mayor Andre Dickens was there. It was humbling. It was motivating. It was inspiring. The theme of that day was it starts with me. And so I thought about that, and I started to think about, okay, it starts with me. And it reminded me of sports a lot, because sports, it really does start with you. Your coach can't do it for you. Your teammates can't do it for you. No one can put in the work for you. It really does start with you. And so when I thought about that theme, and I thought about how it starts with me, I went up there and I said, I'm here living the MLK dream. We just so happen to call it the Atlanta Dream. I talked about how I'm standing for my parents' dream. I'm standing for my generation's dream. I went in there and talked about how I'm here with my wife. I said that at Ebenezer Baptist Church, and if you guys don't know, that's a big deal. That's a big deal to have a wife, and you can just say it, and you can be accepted, and you can be welcomed in. So I realized that, man, it really does start with me. Generational change, it starts with me. Generational wealth, it starts with me. Ending generational trauma, that starts with me. And then I was listening to what Dr. Bernice King talked about, and she talked about how people love to quote MLK, and people love to use all of his different lines, but people don't love to walk the walk and live it. And that stuck with me. Yeah, that stuck with me because I had to make sure she wasn't talking about me. You know, I had to look, and it starts with me. So I had to make sure, you know, am I walking the walk? Am I not just talking the talk? And she went on to say that it's convenient. A lot of things are convenient, but sometimes we have to live in the uncomfortable truths. Sometimes we have to live in the areas that aren't convenient. And sometimes, you know, it doesn't mean that it's not going to have conflict. Nonviolence, of course, but sometimes there will be confrontations. Everything isn't going to be easy and convenient. So I started to think about that, and I started to think about all the things that I've been through forever forward, you know, starting out in West Virginia, going on to UConn, then the WNBA. Everything was about forever forward and starting with me. When I was invited to come here, I'm like, okay, the city of Columbia. I'm going to be honest. At first, I thought it was Columbia, South Carolina. I was like, okay, Missouri. Shouts to Missouri Athletics over here. You know, when I started to think about that, I was like, wow, the city of Columbia, Missouri has so much in the DEI space. And then I hear about all the ways it started, all the reasons why, passports, lived experiences. And it made me, you know, I'm living in Atlanta where I feel like we have diversity at a high level. Atlanta's basically Wakanda forever. I mean, okay. Atlanta's basically Wakanda. But coming here, it's beautiful to see that there's a little bit of Wakanda everywhere. There's a little bit of everyone wanting to do a little bit more. There's more connectivity. You know, 2020, for all the bad things that happened in 2020, look at all the moments and momentum that is brought people together. Look at what is done. And we know we have a long way to go. We know that everything isn't fixed right away. We know that I'm not naive to think that we are where we need to be. I'm just excited that we're going to where we're going. And I'm just excited that we're on our way. I'm just excited for the momentum. So forever forward. My hope is that not only today, not only on Martin Luther King Day, not only on Black History Month, not only when the time is easy, I just hope that we all can move forever forward, whether it's hard, whether there's conflict, whether it doesn't feel good, those uncomfortable truths. I just hope that we all move forever forward. Thank you.